I guess on behalf of myself, John Tucker, and everyone at Biozyme, we'd like to welcome Joe and Louise Leathers, the general manager and office manager of the 4 Sixes. I've been looking forward to this for a long, long time. So, Joe, you're the general manager here at the Sixes. What is your role here at the ranch, and when did you start with the 4 Sixes?
Well, I guess to highlight all of it, in 1999, Mike and JJ Gibson asked me if I would go to work at North Camp. And so we were working for Morehouses and had been there 7 years at that time. And I just felt like it was time for a change. My boys had been able to go with me on the wagon at Tom's a lot. And then my girls were at the point in their life they needed a daddy more. And so we took the job at North Camp. Never really imagined even working for Sixes or having the opportunity, but we were there for 5 years at North Camp, and then we were called into the main office and asked if I would take over as wagon boss. And so we moved to town, and I was wagon boss for a relatively short amount of time, and then we were called back into the office and asked if we would go to Dixon Creek Division and run it. And so we moved up there, and we were there for several years. And 4 years. And then in 2008, we were asked, Ann came and asked if we would move back to Guthrie and take over as general manager.
Yeah. Miss Louise, tell everyone your role, not only being supporting the staff and the backbone of Joe, because I always say behind every great man is a great lady, and you're a true testament to that. So your role here at the Sixes.
I never intended to have a career. We raised our kids and homeschooled those kids, and then when we went to Dixon Creek, it had always been a position where the manager took care of the ranch and his wife took care of the books. And so I thought, well, I can work that into my homeschooling schedule. So that's how I started doing office work for the ranch. My role has always been, I'm just going to help Joe do whatever he does. And that's what this office position really is. If he decides to do something else, I'll probably be just tickled to death to go help him someplace else, because we're a team. And I look at my role as a team player, not necessarily an office manager. I do whatever I can to help him in the ranch.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're really a backbone to this operation. Very, very few people know of you. They know that Joe has an unbelievable wife, but you're the backbone to the ranch because you keep him level, and with all the things that he has on his plate, you two can sit down and communicate and work through a lot of that. And it's all about a team, no matter what your operation is. And I think you two are a true testament to that.
You know, John, when Louise and I got married, it went from me to we. That's just the way it is, and that's the way I feel personally. That's the way our marriage needs to be, and that's really probably the way everybody's marriage needs to be, in our opinion. But I would have never accomplished anything without Louise. She's behind the scenes. It adds a whole nother dynamic to your marriage whenever your wife is the office manager of something of this scale.
Yeah.
And we've had to work through some of that.
Yeah.
Still do, probably.
Yeah.
My weaknesses are his strengths, and kind of vice versa.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And
I think it would be, let's go ahead and roll back to our high school years and share with us how you two met. I think it's one of the neatest.
You got to roll back to her junior high. Go ahead.
Well, my dad was a deacon in the church, and his mom was a church secretary, and we had to be at church early one evening for deacon's meetings, and his mom had to be there for records. And so we were just two youth that didn't have anything to do and sat in a church foyer and just started talking. And found out that he was a farmer's kid and I was a rancher's daughter. I think I was about 13 and he was 15. We had a nice conversation, but that was the end of it until, a couple of years later, I guess. And
Is this in Clarendon?
This is Clarendon, in Clarendon, First Baptist Church, Clarendon. We were both involved in the youth group, but we didn't hang out together or visit that much. But one Sunday morning, he found himself sitting right next to me and
Planned.
Yeah, he planned it. And my daddy saw it happening. We sat at the front and Dad sat at the back. And if he ever got too close, Dad would go from the back.
I never could figure out how he could see my hand straight over toward her hand with the pew in the way. But he did. He had a sixth sense.
Airplane, were you?
Yeah.
No.
But, our dating years, we lived so far out in the country that Joe couldn't afford to come get me, take me to town, and bring me back. It was a good hour's drive. So he came out, and Dad put him to work, 104 degrees, cleaning out cattle guards. He tried to run him off best he could. It didn't work. So anyway, we dated that way for a couple of years. I can truly say that we had, 2 dates?
2 dates in 2 years.
Two.
We'd actually go out on a date.
Yeah.
What did y'all do?
Well, our first
The first date, we wasn't very smart, or I wasn't. I drove all the way out there, got there early, and she was still in curlers. So I think she beat it to the back room and hid until she got all the curlers out. And then picked her up and went all the way back to town. And in order for her to date at that early age, we felt like we needed to double date. And so the youth minister and his wife at our church went on our first double date, and we went all the way to Amarillo from Clarendon and had Mexican food, and then went to an amusement park and rode roller coasters and played putt-putt golf. And Mexican food and roller coasters don't mix too good. Anyway, when I got through with the date, went all the way back to Clarendon, took her all the way home. So that expired all the money I had for probably another year.
And all the tolerance my folks had.
Yeah.
So anyway.
But most of our dating took place in her living room.
Yeah.
More of a courtship.
Yeah.
Well, we have 2 boys, David, Jonathan, who everyone else knows as Cotton. I guess told his real name.
Yeah, his registered name's Jonathan.
On his papers.
So when he was in trouble,
He's always been John to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's always been John. And then Sarah and Anna. There's a little bit of space between the boys and the girls, so it's almost like having 2 families.
Yeah.
And because of our, where we lived and what we did, they had 2 complete different upbringings, if you will, and as far as their environment went.
Right.
Nothing we could do about that, but that's just how it happened.
Yeah.
But our oldest son lives in Tulsa, and he works for Spirit Aviation. Our second child, John, he works up there at Frisco Creek, and he manages that. And then our third daughter, Sarah, is married to an Air Force man. And then our youngest daughter is married to a dog trainer over here on Tongue River.
Game management.
Game management. Anna,
Yeah. Grandchildren? How many grandchildren?
11. Yeah, they range from 22 to 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
9 boys and 2 girls.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're blessed. Lots of testosterone.
And had the opportunity for the older boys to come work for me in the summer. So it's a pretty neat situation to be able to do that, to have that opportunity.
Well, I think to talk about your family and how special that is, and to think that you were doing it, you're a bedroll cowboy for that whole time, and it was challenging. We just talked about it. I said, how many years were you a bedroll cowboy?
Yeah.
And you said, till when?
last year.
Till last year.
No, I guess, John, I've always wanted to, number one, all I've ever really wanted to do is cowboy. I love to be at horseback, and I love being out in nature. I love cattle. I just love the whole industry. And I felt like if I was going to learn from the best, I had to go where the best were at.
That's right.
And Louise has been a wagon widow and had to hold down the fort for a lot of years. I mean, I wouldn't venture to guess how many days a year I was out at times, but a lot. And away from home. And when the boys were the right age, they could go with me. And so they learned a lot of work ethic and tradition and character because of where they were at.
Yeah.
But, when I went to work for the Sixes, I told Lee, I said, well, I'm going to be able to get rid of my bedroll and my TP, and I've wore out too since I've been here. There's times that it's the absolute best way to operate. It's just most economic, makes most sense. I'm not a guy that believes you go to a wagon for a photo op. I mean, we have to do a little of that, but that's not why I run a wagon. If we run a wagon, it's for a purpose.
I think the one thing that makes Joe more unique than anybody I've ever met was he never expected anybody to do something he couldn't do himself, or he didn't do it himself.
Right.
And I think that's the reason, being blessed to get to work with Joe and his crew, is the respect that all of his friends and workers have, because no one works for you and Joe. They work with you two. And I think that's what made the working relationship so valuable, because you were one of them. You know what they're up against. You didn't just come to the wagon in the morning for the day's work and then leave. I mean, you were part of the team, and to see what you went through really the last 11, 12 years was brutal. And we can get into that just a little. Explain to everybody when you drowned it out and made the decision in 2011.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people's heard this story, and let me preface what I'm going to say, that whenever you go into a major natural disaster like a drought was in 2010 and 11 and on into 12, not every ranch has got decisions that they've got to make, and because one ranch makes one decision doesn't mean that they're writing a book on what to do things.
Yeah.
But we droughted out in 2010 and 11. We were running out of water. And I thought we had a pretty good drought contingency plan. And so we started working our plan. But we found that in a drought that severe that our plan wasn't good enough. And so our natural resources, our water and our grass, was depleting rapidly. The desert termites come in and they slicked off ground, and it was a pretty drastic situation. And we had about 100 years or so of really the ranch working on genetics, and we'd made some drastic changes in the genetics, and we reached a level that I was pretty proud of, and really working toward an ultimate goal. My ultimate goal, and Ann's was at that time, that we could have a direct to consumer product.
Yeah.
And capitalize on it is what our vision was. Well, when we droughted out, we were looking at, you've got a couple of choices. You can do ranching on a 101 and cull your herd and try to keep a base herd. But we were looking at having to deplete a large part of our herd. And when you do that, we had second and third generation employees working here, and the school survives a large part, not totally, but a large part because of the ranch. And the employees.
Ranches,
and
right?
ranches,
Yeah,
plural ranches around this area. Well, they were all droughting out. It wasn't just us. And so, we look, what are our options? And I won't go into how we got all the country, but long and short of it, I spent a lot of time, and Ann and I made the decision. Ultimately, she made the decision that her exact words were, we're going to bite the bullet and do the right thing. We're going to try to hold our genetics together, and we're going to try to hold these employees together. I mean, these families that rely on us.
That was a true testament of Miss Ann and all of you.
Absolutely.
Those times.
And also, if I can interject, she was also such a land manager. She said that the drought of the 50s wiped this place out. And she said, I watched my mom graze it to the ground, and it took us over 10 years to rebound. I will never do that to the land again. So she had factored in her history,
Right.
as well as what we're going to do going forward.
Yeah, so long and short of it, I did a lot of traveling. I was going away from home a lot, just putting that country together. And I could write a book on on things you don't want to do and things that I learned during that process. But ultimately, we moved between 4,000 and 5,000 head of cattle over a period of time to 9 up to 12 ranches in 5 different states. We were overseeing or taking care of, if you will. Some of them had, the owners of the ranch were taking care of the cattle, and we had our own people there. At one time, we had roughly 1 million acres. Yeah. And 5 or 9 different ranches in 5 different states, plus the 3 we had in Texas. And so, in order to do that, I would take a crew and go and have to go to all those ranches. And there's a lot of logistics, and making that happen is really tough. And so, trying to utilize and to financially help those communities that we're in and the people that's in those communities, I try to use as many of them as possible, as long as it would work logistically and timeline that we had to make. And I would take a crew from here a lot of times. Sometimes I would take a vet with me from here. And we would go to all those states, and I don't know, in the fall I would be gone roughly 2 months, month and a half to 2 months, with occasional breaks to come back in for the horse sale or something important. If I had to, I'd get a commercial flight, or I would drive. It was tough. But I still think, Ann asked me one time, she said, if you had to do it over, would you do it again? And I don't know as I can actually answer that, because circumstances today might not be the same circumstances we had then. And after we realized that we didn't have an emergency management plan in place that would actually work during a very severe drought, we tried to better that plan, if you will. And that took buying some land and putting in some irrigation wells. And we've just gone through a pretty good drought. And I'm not saying we're out of it yet, but we were able to make adjustments this time without making as drastic plans as we did last time. And we'll tweak on it again after this one.
Yeah, your diversity is
the key to every operation.
Correct. Let's, I don't know if this is appropriate time, but let's go back and give us just a little bit of history of the 6s of the ranch, and then roll up to today, where we're at today, and what the future of the ranch looks like from y'all's perspective. I think this is what's a key, is to see the perspective, not from what people see on TV or but I think what's the perspective of the ranch, where it's been, and where it's headed.
Well, let me touch on something to start here. You mentioned TV. Mm-hmm. I think what the new ownership and what Taylor does brings to the forefront and in front of viewers that really don't have any idea really what ranching is. Mm-hmm. A lot of the things that they portray is an dramatization of a lot of things that ranchers actually face across the United States. Now, is it amplified on TV? Sure. It's a TV program.
That's right.
But it actually gives us an opportunity to tell the real story.
Correct.
And this is part of the real story. So going back to your question about a little history of the ranch was founded in 1870 by Burt Burnett, not too long after the Civil War. at the beginning of the cattle industry. So he was one of the pioneers, and he was a man of vision and guts and a work ethic. And so he started the ranch, and the story of the legend of the ranch being won in a poker game with 4 sixes, that's a really good story, but it's really not true. He bought 100 head of steers that had the 4 sixes brand on it at a time when there wasn't any fences, wasn't any brand laws, and so
were they branded on the left rib?
I believe so.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And it was a brand that couldn't be altered with a running iron by cattle rustlers, and so he bought the brand.
Yeah.
And then I don't know whether a lot of people know it, but because of the brand and the cattle theft and the issues that went along with that, he was one of the founding members of the Texas Southwest Cattle Raisers Association in the beginning of the brand inspectors in Texas, what we call special rangers now. So a man of vision saw problems and started working out the problems and trying to be a part of the future of the industry.
And the solution at
the same time. And so then you take it a little farther down the road, and a lot of people don't know is the ranch. Miss Ann Valiant, was one, not the, but one of the founding members of the American Quarter Horse Association. And everybody knows what that's turned in today and how successful it's been. So the heirs to the ranch were people of vision. And Ann Marion, who we worked for, she was a woman of vision. That's why our horse division and our genetics are what they are today. And every manager, I'm the 6th manager, I think, since the founding of the ranch. And every manager that she's hired, she has required them to be visionaries and to work diligently for the benefit of the industry, for the future of the industry, for future generations. Now, we can go into the genetics, the Hereford cattle that we had and the way that we made those changes, and we can talk all day about stuff like that. But the long and short of it, since 1870, this ranch has been a ranch of vision, not just for us alone, but we've always had the industry in mind, and we're working to improve that.
I think you've been a true testament of that too, is the vision that you've had in over the 20 years that you've been with the Sixes and the accomplishments that you've made, not for you, for your team, for the 4 Sixes. Maybe you two share with us some of the accomplishments that meant a lot to you two since you've been working for the Sixes.
Well, I'm gonna ask Louise to start.
A few things that I'll intermit that I'm very proud that you've done that. If you don't mention, I will, in regards to disposition of cattle.
Well, I think you're going to get a little bit of 2 different answers probably. So I'm going to let Louise start out with this. What are some accomplishments of the ranch that you think's been beneficial and that you're proud of? Employees?
Yeah.
Children?
We're a team.
Yeah.
Not just as a husband and wife, but I think you're referring to a team as the crew.
Yeah.
I think the respect that's amongst your crew is, and I haven't been on every big ranch in the country, but I can speak for your crew and staff, is the amount of respect amongst your crew and your people is unbelievable.
For each other.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think the one model that you two have different is family comes first, work comes second. Yeah. And a lot of working operations don't have that. And that's why I applaud you two.
Well, the reality is if you're working as many people as we do, as many families, if you want them to succeed, if you want the ranch to succeed, the families have to succeed.
Correct.
We grieve. If a family is in distress or breaks up, Joe and I will. It's painful for us to watch that happen. And when we hire a young couple, especially for a role of responsibility, my first words to her are, your kids, your husband, your home comes first before this job. If this job gets in the way, then we need to do something different or work it out to where it's workable, because we never want the ranch to tear apart a family, the responsibilities of it. The responsibilities are heavy enough, but we want to train people how to carry those responsibilities and still have a successful family. Yeah.
And I think it's really neat what Mr. Sheridan's been able to accomplish in trying to keep the sixes together and employees together. When all the transition came in place, did you ever think in the back of your mind there was ever a remote chance that it could all be kept together?
We're still in transition. It's going to be.
Let's back up just a little bit to get to that.
Yeah.
The accomplishments of the ranch. Vision has always been utmost, and one of them is genetics. Mm-hmm. And John, you and I have worked together, and I've consulted with you on some of that. But to get it to the level that we're at genetically, it doesn't happen by accident, and it happens by plan and incremental execution of that plan, so that you can financially afford it to work up to a level. And you get to a level, and the hardest part is to maintain that. Mm-hmm. You can always talk about, I want to improve, but maintaining where you're at is as big a risk as anything on genetics. And so we've accomplished a level that I'm pretty proud of for a commercial herd. Then the question becomes, how do you capitalize on it? And we'll get into that, and I'll address that a little bit more in a second. But the other thing is a lot of this country, I always tell people two things. In this country, if it doesn't bite you, it pokes you. And then our water's about 20% moisture, which means there's a lack of it, and what you do have is not very good. And so when you talk about environmental sustainability, we have done a lot of work here to bring this ranch back to a state that it was, and to maintain that to what it was in the late 1800s. This was not a brush thicket in the late 1800s. And so
a lot of that was done when the cattle were relocated. You all had a vision. You and Ann, you were already working for down the road.
Right. Now, so we've worked extremely hard to maintain that, to protect our water source, to improve on our water source, to have good clean water, to maintain a stocking rate that is good for the environment, so that wildlife and cattle can coexist, not just coexist, but thrive. I think it was put one time that we worked, and Ann worked, to make this ranch the best that it can be, based on the environment and the location that we're at. And that's what every rancher across the United States strives to do.
Correct.
So now then, let's talk a little bit about the new ownership in Taylor. Taylor is a man of vision. There's no question about that. And the first thing I asked him is, what is your vision for the ranch? And he said, to take it to the next level. And so when I asked him to define that, he was lockstep with what my vision was and what Ann's vision was. And you can't say, nobody can say that's anything, it's not an accident. That's divine to bring those two worlds together.
Yeah.
Now, what we do with it from this day forward, that's in our hands. How do we portray that? How do we tell the real story of who we are? And when we're telling the real story of who we are, we've got to be telling the real story of the industry as a whole. I have people say, well, we don't have oil. The 60s can do a lot of things that we can't do. And I've heard that for 20-something years. And the truth of the matter is, my cows have to pay for themselves just like anybody else's.
Yeah.
There's two phrases that I hate. One is, we've got to do something. That's a really, really dangerous,
Dangerous,
open-ended
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah.
That means you know something's wrong, but you're going to let somebody else figure out, and somebody else that figures out how to fix it may not have a clue of what they're doing. The other one is leading from behind. I don't know about you, but where I grew up, that was following.
Yeah.
So if you're given an opportunity to lead and you're giving a podium to stand on, you need to stand on it with the vision and integrity of what you're going to do to impact the rest of the industry, small operators as well as large.
Right. The industry has to take care of itself because we support each other. One branch isn't going to rock the world, but the industry can. So you have to work together.
You got to be a leader, and that means influencing. But you better be careful be careful what you ask for. You might get it.
Get it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Kind of plan your work your plan.
Exactly.
Yeah. To the young visionaries, to the young Joe Leathers or the young Miss Louise, what is some advice that you would give young people today, not only within agriculture, but within today's structure? I mean, today is different than it was 10, 20 years ago. What is some advice you two would give the young people today?
I can only give you what I've seen and personal. School's not all bad. You need to educate yourself or go get formal education, because there's a lot of business end of this. There's a lot of political ends of the industry that have to be dealt with. There's a lot of animal health, nutrition knowledge, and it's all out there. It's at our fingertips, and it's people like you that will share and teach. Don't be afraid to ask. You don't have to give up your desire to be horseback or to be a cowpuncher or to sleep in a bedroll if that's what you want to do. And there's nothing wrong with a four-wheeler if that's what works for the place that you're on.
Yeah.
Everybody's got different things that work and don't work in their climate, on their personal places. Don't fence yourself in, not only mentally, but physically within the boundaries of your fence. You've got to look outside the fence. You've got to look into the future. I think that would be probably my biggest thing.
And I would say get out there and work.
Yeah.
I've taught all of my kids, and I'm big on education, but there is nothing that causes you to relate more to your employees or your environment than to get out there and do it yourself. If someone graduates with a degree in ranch management, but they haven't spent 10 years, I'm not going to say sleeping on the ground, because that's not for everybody, but if they haven't done their share of hard labor, then they can't relate to those. And in this industry, it's hard labor.
Yeah.
And I would say
education is great,
but put your hands to the plow and do it by the side of the people that you ask to work with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, you can get a master's degree in ag business, let's say. But until you get out in the real world and have to deal with the challenge that you're faced and learn how to be a critical thinker, and by that I mean you've got to be able to look at a situation and change the way that they used to do it if it's not working. Admit you're wrong, wave the white flag, say, hold up, this is my fault.
Let's do it again.
Let's rearrange this. There has to be some of that. So you can get a degree, and I'm an advocate of it. But there's some real world experience you've got to have to be exceptional at what you do.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
We'd always heard of the 4-6s, and we'd drive by whenever we were young people and look at the ranch and go, wow, isn't that incredible? But we would have never pursued coming here. Someone actually called and said, there's an opening. Would you be interested in coming? That's the only reason we ever ended up here. to begin with. And
Well, it happened twice. I mean,
Yeah.
we were offered a job, and I here at the Sixes one time, and I turned it down. And then a year or two later, it was offered again, and that's when I took it because God's timing was right.
yeah,
You know, I know you've heard me say it, John, and I know the crew's heard it, and without a doubt, my kids have heard it. But everything in our life has not only been a God thing. I've never strived to
climb ladders.
climb ladders. I mean, if you climb a ladder, you're typically stepping on somebody.
Yeah,
And so I always figured the cream rose to the top for whatever situation or circumstance was at the time. And if you filled that role, they'd ask you. Or they'd look up and see if somebody's already doing it, But the two things that I've always strived to my kids and to my crew is never panic. I mean, we face some very difficult challenges in our careers. Both of us, everybody in the industry has. But my philosophy is if you panic, you'll make a knee-jerk decision and it won't be the right one. So number one, never panic. And number two, you don't procrastinate. You don't put things off. But you procrastinate.
Yeah.
And wait on God.
Yeah.
And, I think you lead by example. I don't have to preach my faith.
just live it.
Just live it.
Yeah.
To the best of our ability. Have I faltered? Sure. Everybody does.
Yeah.
Have I not been successful in everything? Sure. There's no way I could be successful in everything. Didn't work that way. But you lead by example.
Yeah.
And you find whenever you're following the Lord, it's not a it's not a health and wealth gospel. Life is going to happen, and with it, all of its hardships and all of its failures. But God reveals Himself to the rest of the world, and how you live and walk with Him, and He guides your steps. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I guess I'd like to share with people is one thing about Joe. He never had to tell anybody that he was on a good horse. His actions always showed that. Truly one of the great horsemen I've ever been able to get to work with. I've learned a lot. I learned a lot about him working a crew when he would come north. And I'll never forget that if a person was in a wrong position, he never ever took it the way our former generations would do. And but you would wait till the end of the day, and the timing was right, and you might say to that young man, and he'd had all day to think about it, and he knew he was out of position, and you didn't have to say anything. And I think that was a true testament to you that your patience with your crew and with your team is remarkable.
Well, I've worked on more crews than I've led, and I've had a few bosses or wagon bosses through the years that would just have a meltdown over something.
Yeah.
And I've never known anybody that didn't know they'd messed up.
Yeah.
And if they didn't, they're the ones that need to be taught. Everybody else already figured it out.
Right.
So why expound on it?
Yeah.
Save a good mad for something important.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right about his horses. They have power steering.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate the compliment. I just like good horses.
Well, you make a good horse, though. And because you've had some horses that were probably, and you know that were maybe just above average, ordinary, but because of you, you've taken those horses to another level. And it's been fun to watch.
I appreciate that. It's just something I love to do. And if I have to when I get old and have to have a hoist to pick my saddle up and lead the horse under it, I'm in a ramp to get on, I'm still going to get home.
That's all we're going to do. Yeah.
Everything in our industry work, whether it be from feed salesmen, mineral salesmen, other ranchers, cattle buyers, packing houses, whatever, it's called relationship.
Yeah.
And what I found with VitaFirm, number one, I don't know whether all of your salesmen are like that, but I got a feeling the majority are. They develop a relationship with your customer to the point that you have trust. And then the product will sell itself. there's times here that it is by far the best product that we can put out. I've seen great results on the cattle. I've seen great results from the stress tubs. Our breeding during stressful times when we have the availability of grass, but it's really dry, I've seen VitaFerm keep our breeding, our conception rate. But what sets you apart is you realize that there's different times of year, and that something different might work good for us during that interim time. And that's what sets VitaFerm apart. They've got a good product. It's proven itself to me. It works. And I bet you can ask the majority of other customers and they're going to tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
But you're also realistic, and you call me and you say, look, commodities are going up. You might need to look at getting some ordered if you need it. But you've never pushed. You've always given me facts and data and allowed us to and helped us work through the most economical part of it, not just the nutritional, but what's economically viable. And that's what sets VitaFerm apart.
I guess probably in closing, on behalf of myself, Katie Williams, that we're so blessed to have come down and do this, all of the team at VitaFerm, we'd like to thank Mr. Sheridan for allowing us to get to do this, but I'd like to personally thank you, Joe and Miss Louise, for this opportunity.
You betcha.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Miss
You betcha.